So you guys will finally stop pestering me, and let me go back to covering random Wikipedia articles. Today, we're going to look at another alternate history scenario, presented in the Hearts of Iron 4 mod, the Thousand Week Reich, where this time, no one really wins the Second World War. Let's go. The point of divergence here is the Battle of Dunkirk. The British never succeed in their evacuation, leading to their expeditionary force in France being completely wiped out, with the Brits then suing for peace. After signing an armistice with France, Germany turns east and invades the Soviet Union like in our timeline. Though this time around the Soviets didn't win, and fled to the city of Perm. All the conquered territory was turned into Reich commissariats, essentially states that were to be depopulated and filled with German settlers. Now, what German propaganda, even in our timeline, promised was that German settlers would have an emptied land to come out and live a good Aryan life, with the only reminders of the presence of Slavs being some smokestacks in the background, when in reality the conditions in the Reich commissariats are pretty terrible, even for the German settlers. The natives don't exactly go quietly, with partisan activities and terror attacks on German settlements being incredibly common. Fighting a massive anti-partisan war is also quite expensive, and since Germany ran out of countries to conquer and loot to fund the war machine, they're pretty broke. Hitler himself is also not doing well, because meth is bad for you. In 1948, he falls into a coma, and General Henning von Tresckow attempts a coup, which then falls apart when Hitler wakes up. But this shows how dependent the entire rotten structure of the Reich is on Hitler. So when he actually dies, shit will probably hit the fan. There's also the problem of the military. The SS and German army, aka the Wehrmacht, fight with each other a lot. And even the SS is divided into two, with infighting between the Himmler and Heydrich cliques. Is Crimea Russian or Ukrainian? Well, in TWR, it just belongs to the SS, who turned the place into a big beach resort. With all this, it's less a matter of if, but when the Reich will collapse in on itself. Before we get into the next section of the video, I just want to give a huge shout out to this video sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Any good fantasy game is going to have dwarves, and Raid Shadow Legends does not disappoint. One of the newest factions added to Raid's lineup of over 600 characters, dwarves, have their own lore. The third race made during the time of creation, they've largely kept to themselves. Not long ago, Sidaros' demonic forces tried to invade the Dwarven Kingdom. The dwarves won at great cost, and their king gathered an army to march to the service and join the common cause with the forces of light against the darkness, ending over 1,000 years of non-alignment. And by the way, use my links below to download Raid Shadow Legends for yourself, to your mobile phone or PC. These guys look pretty epic. The faction has a lot of variety and detailed designs. There's a lot of things I really enjoy about the game, one of which is unlocking new champions through the portal. In the game, you collect shards and use them here to get new champions. Like right now, Raid just got this epic champion, and this month, Raid just released a cool new Doom Tower update. There are two huge bosses to take on, Astyanax the Dark Fae and Bomal the Dreadhorn, along with new enemy balance on tower floors, new secret rooms to discover, and most importantly, new artifact sets to win. The whole month is packed with events and tournaments, including one very special event, Super Raids. Super Raids let you double up your rewards from hitting dungeons. If you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you need to do is hit the link in the description or scan my QR code, and you'll get an epic hero, Kuranu. 200,000 silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in the game. All the treasure will be waiting for you here. Do it fast, since the rewards will only be available for the next 30 days, and only for new players. Once you're in, you can find me in-game under the username LoganProds, and if you're fast, you can join my clan.
British, those were stupid Americans from the ocean.
So, Britain signed an armistice with Germany in 1940, which means the war was over for them, right? Well, not really. In Asia, their colonies get attacked, but with help from the United States and the rest of the Commonwealth, they actually win against the Japanese. But, same as in our timeline, maintaining colonies is pretty hard, and the Indians want independence. But this happens violently, with Britain basically being kicked out by force from India, with India dissolving into a bunch of different warring factions. Britain is basically left irrelevant in a geopolitical sense after this, with the rest of the world being dominated by both America and Germany. The instability of post-war Britain also causes investors to leave en masse, leaving the economy in the toilet. A mess which Prime Minister Clement Attlee will have to clean up. France in this timeline is split into two, sorta. After their defeat in 1940 by the Germans, France signed a temporary armistice creating the Vichy regime, under the leadership of Philippe Pétain. This was later resettled in what would be called the Second Armistice, which was basically Germany getting cheeky back at France for Versailles. The country was forced to cede large amounts of territory, including Alsace-Lorraine to Germany and Corsica to Italy. France also lost most of its colonial empire. With the loss of Tunisia and French Somaliland to the Italians, Morocco would later be seized by Spain, and Japan would occupy Indochina. The rest was either occupied by the British Empire, joined the Free French movement, or gained independence. The Free French movement, or the French Authority, is basically de Gaulle and his boys who fled to Africa to have a pint and wait for everything in Europe to blow over, before they come back to reconquer the French mainland. Though for all intents and purposes, the Americans and the British are propping the whole thing up, especially considering the natives don't like being subjugated by a bunch of exiled French people. Italy is just kind of there too. The war got them a few colonies in Africa and influence in the Balkans, but not the huge colonial empire they wanted. Considering the Axis was mostly an alliance of convenience, it fell apart pretty quickly post-war, and Italy founded its own Mediterranean pact. They sort of faced the same problem as Germany to the north, as maintaining and garrisoning their newfound colonies is hard. But at least they have the oil money from the Libyan colony propping the economy up.
This is America.
The United States never got involved in Europe, kind of just watching from the sidelines and being like, oh shit. But Pearl Harbor still happens, drawing America into the war. The Pacific War is brutal, and after dropping 4 nuclear bombs on Japan and a costly naval invasion, the Japanese surrender. Post-war is an economic boom, with the United States also having the most powerful military. The US leads the Toronto Accord, an alliance of the remaining democratic powers of the world in a Cold War against Germany. Japan was pretty screwed up by the brutal Second World War, and in 1952 it is still under occupation by America. There are plans to hand over power to a democratic government, though that is looking difficult. China and its ruling Kuomintang party found itself on the winning side of the Pacific War. After Japan's surrender, Chiang Kai-shek went sicko mode on the communists, purging anyone with even a Marxist thought, though many communists fled to Vietnam and Mongolia. Even though Chiang Kai-shek had the impression of a pretty powerful authoritarian leader, the country is still incredibly fractured between opposing interest groups and warlords who control entire provinces. The Soviet-German War began in 1941, when German forces invaded the Soviet Union in Operation Barbarossa, seizing vast amounts of Soviet territory and destroying virtually any Red Army forces in their way. The Soviets would be pushed back farther and farther, all the way to Moscow. However, it would still be far from Hitler's prediction of a swift and decisive victory. Instead, the war would drag on for 5 bloody years of brutal fighting. By 1945, the Soviet Union began to slowly collapse from within, after years of exhausting war and suffering defeat after defeat at the hands of the Germans. In Central Asia, the Turkic people would unite, declaring the newly Islamic state of Turkestan, independent of the Soviet Union. While in the Caucasus, the Georgian and Armenian SSRs would both secede individually. At the same time, in the Far East, many different warlords would rise in power in the power vacuum left by the loosening of the grip of Soviet authority. After the defeat of Japan by the United States in the Pacific War, the United States would occupy Vladivostok and North Sakhalin, facing minimal resistance, with Red Army units surrendering en masse. The Americans re-established the Russian Republic, with quotations on the Republic, because it's a military dictatorship which totally promises to democratize at some point, and is the first non-communist Russian government to exist since the end of the Russian Civil War. By 1946, the war would peter out, as the last substantial Soviet resistance melted away, leaving Germany with control of all the territory west of the AA line. What was left of the Soviet government fled to Perm, where Leventry Beria and the NKVD would seize power in a short power struggle after the disappearance of Joseph Stalin. What happens next? Well, maybe we'll get a part 2 someday. Thanks to the awesome people at Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Thanks for patrons Andy Luke, Emerson Rubio, Link the Vets 24,
Skylar Weston, Ches Cookies,
Sean from Nerdy Loins, and Zyma.